In today's video, I would like to talk about some tips for essay writing. And before moving on to talk more about some other tips, we need to know that the time allowed for writing essays is 1 hour and 15 minutes, which is 75 minutes in total. So on average, you have about 36 minutes to write each essay, excluding the time you need to double check your final essay and write drafts, etc. So, time allocation is my first tip for you. So you need to manage your time very carefully. You need to spend usually at least 3 minutes for reading different questions. And then during the process, you will need to also write drafts. You need at least 3 minutes for it. Also, make sure that you must finish writing your essay within the time limit of 36 minutes. So after 36 minutes, try to move on to the next question and only spend at most 3 more minutes on it. Meaning that for the first question you're working on, you can only spend at most 39 minutes on it. Don't spend more than it. After going beyond this period of time, if you still haven't finished, you must go on to the next question, because you wouldn't want to risk not having enough time to write anything of content in your next essay question, because both questions are equally important in contributing to your final grade. Also, when reading the question itself, there are several things you need to look for. The first thing is you need to find the question word. So remember all those tasks that you have completed about different skills, such as to what extent, trace and explain, etc. So after looking for the question word, you need to think about what skill the question is testing. Sometimes you don't say it directly, so you need to guess it after reading the question. Also, you will need to read the question and analyze using 5W1H. So we often use this as important means to analyze the question. For example, who, what, when, where, how, and then why. So usually, you will need to find what kind of questions they are in fact asking by breaking down the question in different aspects. For example, for where, you will need to note about which country the question is asking about. For example, China, Europe, Japan. And then for who, usually sometimes they will ask questions about historical figures, so you must know who they are. And then for what, for example, what concept or incident they are asking about, so you must make this information correct and clear to yourself. And then also, very important is the time frame, because you need to cite relevant historical evidence from the time frame. So the next tip is to read all the questions inside paper 2, from question 1 to 7. Read them all, because you will need to judge by reading the question and analyzing the question about how confident you will be in answering those questions. But don't spend too much time on it. Just spend some short period of time reading through the question and think very quickly about the points and arguments you have for each question, and then to think whether you are familiar enough with the question type or the historical event. So we need to think about the skill, time frame, and concept, and whether we are confident and also familiar with these things asked in the question. So this is very important that you need to read all questions beforehand, so to make a thorough consideration on which questions you would like to pick to answer. On the writing itself, I have also several tips for you. First, to write a draft. This is often neglected by a lot of students because they think they don't have enough time. But I think this is very important because you need to write down your stance and points and think carefully about what stance or arguments you have, so that you need to draw out the general line of thoughts. And while writing, you need to always refer back to this draft so as to make sure you don't stray away from your stance or become logically incorrect while writing the essay itself. You can either put it in point form or write several topic sentences to remind yourself what you are going to write about. So this comes to the next tip, which is to always refer to a draft while writing the essay to prevent logical problems and also becoming unfocused while writing your essay. Because after writing several paragraphs, you often forget what your stance or initial idea is about. For each historical paragraph, make sure you stick to this general structure. To first start with a topic sentence which concludes your entire paragraph, and then elaborate on your topic sentence and give examples from historical evidence, and then to end your paragraph with a concluding sentence to remind yourself and the reader about what this paragraph is about. So this general structure is very important for each historical paragraph in your essay to make your essay look organized. The next tip I have for you is to use connectives within the paragraphs, and also to be clear and concise when writing your essay in terms of your expressions. This is to make your paragraphs and your essay look more precise and concise and more organized, so that your marker is finding it more easier to go through your essay and mark your essay. Make it short and sweet. Don't use overly complicated sentence structure to confuse the reader and yourself. And be clear enough, be direct. Don't use figurative languages. Just speak out your point directly and make sure you're logically correct. Check your logic throughout the essay, especially when you have time for double checking. Make sure you are always logically correct.